The United States spent nearly 2% of its entire GDP on the Manhattan Project. Working under total secrecy during the Second World War, American scientists successfully weaponized nuclear fission, creating a device capable of releasing massive energy through a sustained chain reaction. When President Truman met with his allies around this circular table at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945, he believed the U.S. had secured an exclusive grip on this technology. He secretly informed Stalin that the Trinity test was a success, assuming the Americans now held a total monopoly on global power. A month later, the strikes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki provided the world with raw proof of the weapon's scale. Conventional military defenses were suddenly secondary to a force that could erase a city in seconds. Rather than securing a permanent American advantage, the use of the bombs signaled to every other major power that they were now defenseless. This match shows how that perceived monopoly actually triggered an immediate race, as 9 other dormant nodes around the globe began working to achieve the same capability. The global scramble for survival that started in 1945 has resulted in 10 nuclear-armed nations today. These weapons aren't just sitting in silos, they are actively deployed and hidden across the globe, inside submarines like this one, deep beneath the oceans. Joseph Stalin was secretly furious that the Americans had beaten him to the bomb. To catch up, the Soviet Union relied on a network of double agents already embedded inside the Manhattan Project, who funneled technical designs back to Moscow as early as 1941. By 1949, the Soviets successfully tested their first device in Kazakhstan. This was years earlier than Washington expected, and it effectively ended the American monopoly, locking the two superpowers into a permanent Cold War arms race. While the Soviets used espionage, the United Kingdom was forced into development by a political betrayal. British scientists had pioneered the early research under a project called tube alloys. But after the war, the United States terminated their sharing agreement and kept the final results for themselves. Because Britain already controlled significant uranium supplies and possessed the foundational research they'd handed to the Americans, they were able to resume their work quickly. They successfully tested their first independent weapon in 1952. America's attempt to hoard the technology explicitly forced both their primary rival and their closest ally to independently weaponize just to maintain their standing on the global stage. France followed a similar path of independence. President Charles de Gaulle became convinced that France could not rely on the US or NATO for protection if a nuclear war actually broke out. Seeking absolute sovereignty, France developed its own arsenal, conducting its first test in the Sahara Desert in 1960. In the East, a different rift was forming. Tensions between China and the Soviet Union reached a breaking point, leading Moscow to withdraw all its nuclear assistance. Mao Zedong denounced the Soviets for being too soft on the West and pushed China to finish its program in total isolation. Despite the domestic challenges of the Cultural Revolution, China pushed forward with incredible speed. They detonated an atomic bomb in 1964 and moved to a full hydrogen bomb just 32 months later, the fastest any nation has ever bridged that technical gap. By the end of the 1960s, it was clear that a nuclear umbrella provided by a superpower was no substitute for an independent arsenal. True national sovereignty was now measured by the ability to stand alone. As official treaties tried to slow the spread, the race went underground. Israel built this secretive facility in the Negev desert with early French help. Despite decades of international speculation and leaked documents, they have never officially acknowledged that their nuclear program exists. India took a different approach, using reactors provided for peaceful energy to secretly develop warheads. When they detonated this massive crater in 1974, they called it a peaceful nuclear explosion, a claim that was met with worldwide sanctions. India's success triggered an immediate response from Pakistan. Their leadership swore that if their rival had the bomb, they would get one of their own at any cost, even if it meant the entire nation had to go hungry to fund it. Pakistan's path relied on Abdul Qadir Khan, a scientist who stole enrichment blueprints from a Dutch facility. His work didn't just build Pakistan's bomb, it created a global black market for nuclear technology that bypassed international controls entirely. That black market enabled North Korea to develop its own arsenal. By trading with Pakistan and using its own uranium deposits, the regime of Kim Jong-il was able to successfully test a weapon in 2006, ensuring its survival through the ultimate deterrent. South Africa remains the only nation to ever reverse this trend. They built 6 secret weapons for regime protection, but voluntarily dismantled them as the apartheid government fell, becoming the first nation to fully dispose of an active arsenal. The spread of the bomb had entirely bypassed the control of global superpowers, moving through illicit networks and shadow facilities where international treaties couldn't reach. Today, modern satellite surveillance and seismic sensors make it nearly impossible to hide a nuclear test. Creating a program from scratch now draws immediate, massive international pressure before a device can even be finished. But for those who already have them, these weapons create a paralyzed peace. Pakistan maintains a first-use policy, meaning they reserve the right to use nukes to deter even a conventional military strike, forcing their rivals into a state of constant, cautious restraint. The chain reaction isn't over. If Iran crosses the threshold into nuclear capability, Saudi Arabia has explicitly promised to follow. As we see here, the Middle East is currently the most likely site for the next set of dominoes to fall. Nuclear weapons are now a permanent fixture of global military doctrine. They are hidden in silos and submarines across every ocean, waiting for a command that represents the end of the calculation. The device created in 1945 didn't just end a world war, it initiated a state of permanent geopolitical paranoia. Today, the world remains locked in a standoff, where stability depends entirely on the belief that no one will ever be the first to pull the trigger.